Welcome to the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This podcast is dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like all the best bookshops, this podcast is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. So tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book at the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. I'm Stacey Horan, author, book lover, and host of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This is episode number 177. For more information about this or any of our episodes, go to my website, staceyhoran.com. If you enjoy the podcast, leave us a review, like us on social media, and share us with your friends, family, and fellow readers. In today's episode of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet, I'm chatting with author Melody Johnson about her latest novel, Sight Beyond the Sun. It is the follow-up to her novel, Beyond the Next Star, and both books are part of Melody's Love Beyond series. In this latest, Sight Beyond the Sun, Melody brings us fresh main characters and a whole new world to explore in this standalone alien romance that involves espionage, an intergalactic human-trafficking ring, and an enemies-to-lovers romance. Melody has been writing and publishing for quite a while now, and she'll give us some insight into mistakes she's made, lessons she's learned, and her experiences as a hybrid author dealing with both traditional and indie publishing. In this episode, I'll chat with Melody about her writing journey, how she continues to grow as a writer and editor with each book she produces, and why she shifted her focus from running book ads to finding ways to connect directly with readers, as well as a few other things. Coming up. Melody Johnson, I want to thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
So I feel like you are becoming a regular visitor to the podcast. I think this is our third interview. And
it is.
This time we're going to talk about your new book, Sight Beyond the Sun. This is now book 2 in a series that you've started. So if you don't mind, before we start talking about this series in general, let's talk about this particular book, Sight Beyond the Sun. Tell us a little bit about it and what inspired you to write this one.
Yeah, so Sight Beyond the Sun, it's a book 2, but it opens with fresh main characters traveling to a whole new world. My heroine, Kinsley Switch Morales, is an adrenaline junkie, an explosions specialist, and she's abducted by aliens and caught in what she suspects is some sort of intergalactic human trafficking ring. Not that she allows herself to be trafficked for very long.
Tell us a bit about these characters, because like you said, these are brand new characters. So this book is a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce us to Kinsley Switch Morales and the other main character.
Yep. So Kinsley, during her time being abducted by aliens, implements an elaborate plan to gain the trust of her alien captor and disable his crew in the hopes of commandeering their ship and flying back to Earth and saving all the humans on board the ship, which, is overwhelming to say the least, but she is a former special forces operative. And so she handles it like she would, her next mission and possibly like her most important mission of her whole life. And the person or the alien who has kidnapped her is the hero, Raveno Javier, and he's the captain of the spaceship. But he is undercover. He's actually disgusted with himself and with his crew for having to perpetrate these crimes and abducting these people. But if he were to break his cover now for only 36 people, it would jeopardize all of his years of undercover counter missions to save his planet. So he is very conflicted in his morals and in what he's doing, and as the story progresses, his growing relationship with Kinsley.
So this book is a paranormal romance, but it sort of skirts the edge of science fiction in some respects.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. Yep.
So while the books in this series are standalone, fans can expect some similarities book to book as they go through the series. Can you refresh our memory as to book one in the series, Beyond the Next Star?
Yes, so Beyond the Next Star, Delaney is abducted by aliens. So in that way, it's similar. But we open in book one with Delaney having already traveled to the new planet. She is being sold as a pet to her alien owner, and her alien owner does not know that she is a sentient being. Torek, who's the hero in that book, believes that Delaney is truly a pet, and he is purchasing her to help with as an animal companion to help with his PTSD as mandated by his superior officer. And so it was really important to me to have a lot of differences in book two, even though they're both alien abduction stories. The heroine, Kinsley, has a lot more agency in this book, in book two. In book one, Delaney actually takes it upon herself to pretend to be a pet in order to avoid the notice of the murderer who she believes is after her. Whereas she is just full-fledged in commandeering the ship and, planning this mission. There is no pretending about it.
Let's talk a bit about world building for this one, because there's commonality in some ways across the books in the series, but you had to create whole new characters. You had to create new worlds, new scenarios. Did you approach it differently this time around?
A little bit. I would say while world building, I have a pretty structured approach in general. So I have a big spreadsheet. I do a lot of brainstorming on who my characters are, what the new culture is, what planet they're on, the agriculture of the planet, the temperature of the planet, what type of people might be living on that planet, and what morals and what jobs and might sprout from this planet that I'm creating. But what did help to guide me for book two was the fact that finding differences, as opposed to book one, I did not want for readers to feel like it was the same book just because it was an alien abduction. And so whereas in book one they're on an Arctic planet, book two they're in a subterranean volcanic planet. So in those ways, finding opposites, finding things in their cultures that would play off one another, maybe be opposites, maybe be parallels, but very specific parallels to highlight maybe something about their culture, was a lot of fun to develop all of that.
What is your plan for the series? You've got two books. Do you have other books already planned out, or do you take sort of each book in turn when an idea strikes you?
I definitely have one more book planned. There could be more, but for sure there is one more. And I am just now starting. I have fleshed out my main characters. I believe for this third book, it's going to be, for the first time, I'm exploring the possibility of having two couples and having dual storylines that crash into one another midway through the book. And so I'm currently plotting out how I want those parallel storylines to either mirror one another or play off one another so that when that crash occurs, it'll be pretty epic.
This second book, Sight Beyond the Sun, this one is a long book. I'm curious, how long did it take you to write this one?
Too long. So I did something crazy to myself that I've never done before when writing a book, when I wrote Sight Beyond the Sun. And that is, I had a clear vision in my mind of the beginning, middle, and end. And I wrote what I knew was the beginning to the middle. So half a book, but at the time it was the length of a full book. And so very frustrated with myself of, well, do I make this like part one, part two separate books? Have I just droned on and I need to, hone it down? So I had a lot of decisions to make at the halfway point. And so what I've never done before is I actually set the book aside, let it just simmer. And I actually wrote a whole nother book, completely different genre, just to get it out of my system. And then afterward, went back to that part one of Sight Beyond the Sun, reread it with fresh eyes, with better perspective, honed it down, and then wrote part two. So it is all one book. It is on the longer side, but it's not unheard of how long it is. It's a normal long book.
Right, right. You've got two books in this series out. You had a prior series that again was a paranormal romance, vampires, dark, gritty, urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
4 books in that series. I'm curious, do you feel now that you have found your voice after all these books?
I feel like I'm definitely honing in on it. I feel like every time I say this, but it's true, my new book is always my best book. I feel like I'm growing with each book, and becoming a better writer, becoming a better editor, being more critical of myself, and which then may be more frustrating for me along the way, but produces a better end result, a better book. So I'd like to say yes, that I have found my voice, but I know that by the end of my next book, I'll be like, oh, now I'm much better than I was before. So I do feel like I'm getting there. I found my voice, but I know that another year from now, I will have gotten better just from the simple fact of I'm always working on it, always honing in and trying to improve my craft.
And how about your writing process? Do you feel like you've sort of found your stride in how you draft a manuscript, how you create your characters, how you go from start to finish?
I do. In actually crafting my books and planning my books, I've definitely changed a lot throughout the years. When I first started my Nightblood series, I was much more of what they call a pantser. So I write by the seat of my pants. I had a general outline of where I wanted to go and what to do, but I much more so wrote by the seat of my pants. Now I have a much more structured approach where I plan all of my characters in advance. I actually write my back cover copy before I write my book to get a better idea of the conflict, the motivation, the direction I'm going with each character, that each character will have inner conflict between characters in addition to inner conflict within themselves, and how those conflicts play off one another. So I take a lot more time now to really dig in deep with my characters, and through my characters, and what I learn about them, determine what's happening in the plot. So much more character driven, much more planned. Granted, there have been times when my characters threw me for a loop halfway through the book, kind of like they did halfway through Sight Beyond the Sun. But I feel I am enjoying my planning process a lot more now than I used to.
How much time do you spend on the planning process before you start writing, or is it something that you do simultaneously?
A little bit simultaneously. I feel well, for example, the book I'm working on now, I've been planning and honing in on it for about a month. And I think that I'll be ready to go with starting to really write. And when I say really write, I mean having, getting in a certain amount of words or pages per day and being dedicated to that regimen. Right now, while I am honing in on my characters and brainstorming plot, I am writing, like, I wrote the back cover copy. I wrote the first page. I wrote a little bit of a middle scene of like the cute meet. So I'm writing here and there just to get my bearings, and then really looking forward to digging into it next month.
You've been at this for a while now. You've got a number of books under your belt. I'm curious if we can talk for a moment about how you now approach the writing business
Mhm.
while still enjoying the art and craft of writing. Because a lot of authors talk about how much the writing business, how much time the writing business takes, how much energy it
Mhm.
takes. And there's a balance that everyone has to strike between spending your time on that and spending it on what most of the writers really enjoy, which is the writing. So how do you approach that now after all these books, after doing this for a while?
Definitely, it's like you just said, a balance. And I would say learning along the way. So when I first started writing, I was traditionally published. I had a Facebook, but I didn't really have any other social medias, didn't do any videos. And I thought, write the book and people will come. But that mentality doesn't quite work now, especially with the amount of access that we have to reach readers through, Instagram and TikTok and all the many ways online to be able to, Facebook Lives. And so doing promotional work, I've now found enjoyment in that as well because you're reaching readers. And I love talking about my books and hearing people say that they love my books and talking shop about writing. And so that aspect of the business of it has become very enjoyable. Learning being a hybrid author now with my indie published sci-fi romance series has definitely opened up my eyes and the whole new world of the publishing end of it. So having, hiring a professional editor, hiring a professional cover artist, getting, purchasing the formatting software. I format my books myself. The nitty-gritty of simply uploading books to each platform and planning the release. All of that has been a huge learning process, and without my fellow writers helping me to guide along the way, especially in the beginning, I don't know what I would have done. But through experience and through, this is now my second book, and having the resources of fellow authors to give me tips and tricks and learning from their experience as well has just been invaluable. And balancing doing those technical parts of the publishing business. I try to do the technical, do the promotional while I'm maybe, let's say, brainstorming my new book like I am now. And then once I really get into the writing chops of a regimented schedule, that's what I focus on and maybe do a little bit of promotion here and there. But when I'm actually writing a book, that gets my full focus. So when you see me drop offline and I'm not ignoring people, I'm just in my writing cave.
Let's talk about mistakes made, lessons learned. Anything you tried and it didn't work for you? Anything that you thought you should be doing only to come to realize you don't need to do that, or the other way around, anything you were not doing and then suddenly realized, wow, I should have been doing this from the start. I'm curious what lessons you've learned along the way.
So I would say I have a couple of them. One would be book signings. I love in-person book signings because I love meeting readers and talking about my books. But I would say my advice to some authors would be to find your favorite book signings and which ones work well for you. I have been to book signings that I sat there all day and maybe it wasn't well publicized and that just there wasn't much foot traffic. So not many people to talk to, and it gets very bored and sad. But then I've also found there are many book signings that there's lots of foot traffic, and in particular, book signings that are more reader focused. So maybe bigger conventions. They do have a little bit more of an investment to participate, but I found them to be very worth it. I did one time where I was a little bit scared to participate, like in terms of signing up for maybe a panel or signing up like to host a group session, like a presentation. And so I just went to the book signing and it was okay. But then the following year decided, you know what, I'm gonna go all in. I'm going for it. I did a panel, I led a group reading, and then my table was swarmed during the book signing. So I would say one of my lessons that I have learned is just go for it. That readers are there to read. They love authors and they want to hear from you. And so even though you might be nervous and we are natural, writers are natural introverts pretending to be extroverts when we're with people, that it's okay to just go for it. Because I found, at least in my experience, that it was a very positive outcome, very positive experience with readers. Maybe more on the promotional side, I have found that just for me, and because I know that many authors have found lots of success with Facebook ads and Amazon ads, and I have dipped my toe into that. It's possible I'm not doing it right. It's possible that I'm not investing enough, but I found that connecting with readers was a more successful and more rewarding use of my time for promotion.
And that's a very good point. I think a lot of authors look for a quick and easy solution to finding readers, but there's no quick and easy answer. It requires effort on the author's part, like you mentioned. And so I imagine now, after doing this for a number of years, you probably have readers who look for your next book because they've read your others.
I do. And it is so exciting, both online and in person. I was at one of the conferences that I mentioned, and I was going from my hotel room and dragging all my big wheelie wagon to my signing. And a random stranger, a reader, ran up to me and flagged me down and asked me if I was Melody Johnson, would I sign her book, and wanted to take a picture. And I'll always remember that because that was the very first time that I was like, quote unquote, like recognized as being a writer. And I was like, wow, I've made it. So I'll always remember that. And also online, that's actually what kept me going for book two. And I was so frustrated in the slump in the middle when I realized I needed to set it aside for a bit, figure out my book, and then continue on with it. I had dozens of readers reaching out to me because it had been a little while and they had loved book one. They were wondering when book two would come out. They were just keeping tabs on me and couldn't wait for book two. And they would go on and on. It's like, wow, yes, I want to write this book, but now I felt like I need to write this book to figure it out for myself and for them. So it has just been, that aspect of it has been immensely rewarding.
What other goals do you have now as a writer? I know you mentioned the hiatus you took in writing Sight Beyond the Sun. You wrote another book.
Yep.
So what other goals do you have? Are there other genres you want to tackle? Are there other books or series within sort of the paranormal romance that you have brewing? Do you have a plan going out the next year, 5 years, whatever? Or again, is it something that the next idea that strikes you is the one you focus on?
So I do have a bit of a plan. So I am hoping I have an agent now. As of last year, I was able to find an agent with that book that I had written in the interim in the middle of Sight Beyond the Sun. So my goal with that book is to be completely traditionally published. My Nightblood series, which was the first series that I published, was traditionally published ebook first. My current series, the sci-fi romance series, is indie published. And then this new series, my goal is to be completely traditionally published with a print distribution contract with my agent. And then I actually just had a meeting with her earlier this week, going back and forth about, my plans for the future. Like you just said, for like, let's say my 5-year plan. And I definitely want to continue with having an indie series and then also having a traditionally published series, which may be a different genre, but we're still in talks about that to hone in on what publishers might be looking for. So definitely an exciting time.
And it sounds like you're busy.
Very busy. Yes. Just the way I like it.
Well, if people want to keep track of what books you have coming out and where you're going to be and follow you to find out when you're going to have a new release, where should they go to find you and that information?
They can visit my website. It's authormelodyjohnson.com. I keep it updated with all my new releases. And then also on there, if you're interested on social media, my website has all my pages. So Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, all the many places that you can find me on social media can be found on my website. So you can visit my pages and connect with me.
Wonderful. And if anybody's looking to buy a copy of Sight Beyond the Sun or any of your other books, where are they available?
They're all available on Amazon. If you go to my website and click on the book you want, it'll take you directly to that book page, or just go onto Amazon and search for me and I'll pop up.
Wonderful. Well, Melody, congratulations on Sight Beyond the Sun. We wish you the best of luck with that and the other books that you are working on, the new one in the series, plus the other one that's with your agent. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for those. We look forward to those. And congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. Best of luck with the rest of your writing journey.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me again. It's always, again, has been such a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate it.
The Bookshop at the End of the Internet is a podcast dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like any good bookshop, this podcast features a wide variety of books by the equally varied and interesting authors who felt compelled to write them. This podcast gives you a chance to meet these wonderful writers and discover your next must-read book. Listen to the authors describe their books and tell you their stories in their own words. My interviews feature books from all genres and authors from all walks of life, including those who are indie published as well as those published by small presses and large publishing houses. Looking for unique, not so easy to find books for yourself, a friend, or a book club? Tune into this podcast and find your newest favorite author or maybe a soon-to-be bestseller. This podcast, like all the best bookshops, is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. Tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book. You never know what treasures you might find in the Bookshop at the End of the Internet.